Well, welcome to this meeting of Middlesbrough Council. Can I please remind all councillors who are going to speak to use the microphones while doing so. Got to start off with a laugh, haven't you, really? Right, we'll start with the agenda. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. None received. Chair. Nobody? No? Okay. Declarations of interest. No declarations of interest. Right, the minutes of the last meeting we had, which was the annual council meeting held on the 22nd of May. Can we move that the minutes be received as a correct record? Can we have a seconder? Right, agenda item 4. Announcements, communications. I think we've got one of each here, but it's over to the Mayor, Mr. Preston.
Hi, hello everyone. First meeting, so welcome. First point is that we're actually being live streamed, so you're kind of live on telly. I wouldn't encourage you, but it's not illegal to wave to your brothers or your mum or dad or whatever. So you're being live streamed, so just be aware of that. And it's on YouTube and also on Facebook Live. And that's part of a new spirit of openness, talking about what we do, being open about what we do, and welcoming people to see that we've got nothing to hide and we want to talk. The next point for me tonight is to announce there'll be no executive member reports. And the reason for that is the executive is still very new and they haven't had really been in place long enough to have come up with meaningful reports for you. So that will come at the next meeting, which is in July. I want to make a statement on the Middlesbrough local plan. There's been a lot of interest, enthusiasm, criticism about this, but I want to make a statement. So please hear me out for about 50 seconds. The previous administration's local plan was controversial. In parts, it was unpopular, as they often are. And what I want to do is go out to the public. I want to talk to the public. I want officers to talk to the public. I want other members to go and talk to the public and get their thoughts. There are other things as well that need updating. Some of the statistical data that would be involved in that submission is now old and needs renewing. So for that reason, we're not going to submit the previous administration's local plan to government at this point. We're going to redo it. Now, I've talked with officers, we've had exhaustive discussions, and we're certain that this won't involve a lengthy delay. We're certain that it won't cost the council any money, and we're confident that actually we can come back with a better, more popular plan that allows us to build more houses, but in the right places. And I want to draw your attention, the last thing I'll mention here in this section is that I'm looking at allowances and expenses. I've met with the remuneration committee, wise old guys that they are, and they had opinions and they've shared them with me, and one of them's here tonight grinning now. And what I want to do is I want to reflect on what they've said, and I want to come back because I've got some thoughts of my own. So at the next council meeting in July, I'll be sharing some thoughts on allowances and expenses. That's it for this part. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mayor. Are you taking questions on that? No questions. Right. So we'll carry on. Item 5 on the council agenda. Council questions for from members of the public. We only have one tonight. It's from Mr. Adrian Walker. Unfortunately, Adrian can't be with us tonight, so he has asked me to read out his question to the Mayor. It states, please can I ask the Mayor on his thoughts about openness, transparency and consultation as the council moves forward. I would like to close this question by wishing the Mayor and his new executive team the very best of wishes in their endeavours and determination to do what is 100% best for the town of Middlesbrough. Mr. Mayor?
Okay, am I on? Hello, I'm on. Yeah. Right, okay, so 3 words there. Openness, transparency and consultation, all brilliant words, aren't they? Openness kind of means honesty, which is great, and we'll absolutely be open and honest. Transparency means showing that you're honest. So you're not just honest, you're visibly honest. And that's really important. And that's really what tonight is all about with the live streaming. And consultation is about sharing ideas, sharing hopes, and working together to shape communities here in Middlesbrough. So great question. Fully endorse that. We want to be as open, as transparent as possible, and consult far more than previous administrations did.
Right, thank you very much. Item 6 is the revised executive scheme of delegation. Once again, it's over to the Mayor. It's your scheme of delegation for your... It's what? Oh, it's just to be noted, sorry. Terribly sorry, miles away. Okay, item 7, urgent items, there is none. Item 8, members' question time. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tonight. One has been withdrawn. The first one, they're all for the Mayor. The first one is for Councillor Story, from Councillor Story. Councillor Story, would you like to go?
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to ask, what is cynical about local communities and residents bidding for money from a scheme designed to help people shape the services provided in their local community and improve the quality of life for themselves and their families?
Thanks for the question there. It's a good question. And you know what? There is absolutely nothing cynical. Of course there isn't. Helping communities to do great things, determine their own future, get out into their neighbourhood and make great things happen, that's a fantastic thing. And do you know what? There are some incredible organisations locally that do that. I'm thinking of groups like the Ballinger Trust that help finance that. The Tees Valley Community Foundation does that. The Middlesbrough and Teesside Philanthropic Foundation does that. There are awesome groups that already do that. So that's fantastic. I'd encourage that. In fact, I've championed it and driven it. What's cynical, I think, is at a time of desperate finances, at a time when we really don't know exactly how we're going to pull together next year's budget, at a time when money has never, ever, ever been so tight, to suddenly find 1.3 million when libraries are being cut, when children's services is being cut, when great people are losing their jobs, to magic that money when there are already groups that do that kind of work seems very odd at best, but I would describe it as cynical when it's done just before the election. When that's done days before the legal deadline, that's cynical. When that money is targeted at wards that only vote Labour, leapfrogging other wards that are poorer, that's cynical. But giving money to empower communities to do great things and determine their future is a brilliant thing, and I'm all for it.
Can I ask a follow-up, please, Chair? If you accept that...
2 minutes, Councillor.
If you accept that funding those things is a good thing, and you accept that supporting those communities is a good thing, don't you also have to agree that by saying that the council shouldn't do that undermines the council's responsibility as an organisation that helps facilitate local communities and local people to do those things? And if that is a good idea to help communities do those things, it's a good idea whether it's before an election or whether it's after an election. And I agree that all those organisations that do their work is correct. I agree that they should continue to do those things, but I think that you undermine the council when you tell people out there that it is not the council's role to support local communities in the way that Empower would have, and I think that hurts us as a council, and it takes away an opportunity from this council to say how local government can be a force for good in local people's communities and help support them to drive the agenda in their local area and improve the quality of life for them. And I think that hurts the council by doing that.
Yeah, will people in the public gallery, will they please be quiet? This is a council meeting, a council business meeting. You're not allowed to speak, you're not allowed to join in. So please, just be quiet.
Thanks for the question. I mean, listen, it's a good question. I don't condone heckling. Everyone deserves the chance to speak and get their thoughts across. Of course, councils should help communities. Of course, councils find money to empower and do great things in communities. But it's got to be thought out really clearly. I've been involved in giving money away. I know how hard it is. The responsibilities that come with it are monstrous. The council right now is ill-equipped. And in fact, I've got to draw your attention to the fact the council already has pots of money that aren't used. They're not called on. What we need to do is work with groups that have the skills and the expertise to do this, and if the council wants to partly fund them, that's fantastic. But we mustn't go into a half-baked thing just before an election, magicking money that wasn't there 6, 12, 18 weeks ago.
Thank you. Right, next question is from Councillor Jeanette Walker.
Thank you very much, Chair. My question is, how can the Mayor suggest that Empower Community Action Fund is a party political move when it's being delivered with support from partner organisations such as Middlesbrough Football Club, the local NHS trusts, Teesside University and 13? Thank you.
Thank you for that. So basically, it was a political move because it was done just before the election, because it was deliberately timed, because just when money was not around, just when things have never been so tight, and when there are existing brilliant local groups that could have done it, magically, mysteriously, and frighteningly, actually, and irresponsibly, money was found. So that's what makes it political. What makes it party political is the fact the money was only targeted at wards that voted for one particular political party. It was a party political effort.
Supplementary?
Yeah, yes.
Thank you.
3 minutes, that's what you've got. 2 minutes, sorry.
Yeah. Did the Mayor ask, before he criticised the inclusion of Hemlington, with the other 5 wards, why it had been included? If you did ask, and it was not stated to you that it had been included at the request of 13, not at the suggestion of either council officers or members, did you know that 13 are following a consultation exercise which was actively supported by Councillor Nicky Walker at the time and myself? We're intending to make major investment in the Dodford estate in Hemlington, one of the most deprived areas of Middlesbrough, and inclusion in the Empower was an important element of this. If you did know, it didn't ask before making such a criticism, why didn't you? And if he did ask and had been supplied with the truth, why did you say it was politically motivated when it clearly wasn't? I and my residents find this to be totally unacceptable, to a level of such a criticism without just cause. 13 now may have to change certain elements due to your apparent uninformed cessation of the fund. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Hemlington is a great area. It has some huge challenges. And as an individual and as a council, I want to see us do great work there. Now, after the event, dare I use the word scurrying around looking for reasons and evidence, we can all find justification for decisions, but before the event, this is crystal clear, and this is not opinion, it's factual. The council and the politicians reported the awarding of money was based on deprivation. Yes, they did. Please don't shake your head. The deprivation indices clearly said who should be in and who should be out, and that's why it was a cynical political move.
Right, next question is from Councillor Cook.
Thank you. What evidence or research led to the proposed Public Spaces Protection Order? Thank you.
Good question, and we're in consultation right now actually on they call it the PSPO. We love our acronyms, don't we, in the public sector, the PSPO, Public Space Protection Order. There was a scheme in Barking and Dagenham that did great things there. That's when I first heard of the idea. Very similar schemes in Barnsley have produced fantastic results, but my research was really out in the streets. I've been out several times with street wardens, dozens of times in the last few weeks without street wardens, and I chat to people on the doorstep, I go in the shops, chat in the street corner, and the feedback I get is that enough is enough. People are sick and fed up. They see a place that's going downhill. They see rubbish in the streets, they see crime, they see antisocial behaviour, and they see no consequences. We need to take control of this. So what we're doing is, we're not saying we're doing this right now. We're not introducing this tomorrow or next week. What we've done is, in the spirit of openness and transparency, we're consulting with the public. And guess what? The first informal round of consultation, 400 people, 400 have emailed in. That's almost a record for the council. And I tell you, I've seen the early results. The vast majority of those are wholly in favour of this. So I'm really encouraged. It's going to go to a more formal consultation next. It's not a done deal. It's going to be what the public want, but that's the research this is based on the street, listening to people, and 400 citizens emailing in.
I think that some of the behaviour outlined does need action taken. But when we take, for example, bin searching, the problem is littering, as you correctly stated in your video, not the actual bin searching. The issues I'm sick of dealing with are landlords who leave properties in state of disrepair or open for access. There's a property in my ward which for 3 weeks has been open for access. It's been reported twice as a place to grow drugs. These landlords need to be fined, not just the residents. We need to find the businesses that use residents' bins instead of buying a commercial waste bin. We need to find the landlords that just dump out their entire house's furniture into the street, or use their builders just to dump their materials into the street, leading to vermin or blocked drains. We can't just be fining residents. We need to fine landlords and we need to fine businesses, because if we hold them to a standard, everyone needs to be at that standard. The Mayor, will you agree to engage with all TS1 ward members in the upcoming discussions to make sure that the way forward leaves no one in either a worse position or not held to the same standard?
Yeah, good question. I certainly agree with almost everything you said there. There are bad landlords, bad business owners, some shocking people around. But, for example, the bin searching, which I'm not saying it has to happen, but that was included in the consultation because the public wanted it. And what a lot of people see in the back alleys, and we don't get it where I live and probably where most of the members live, is there are people who try to profit from finding things in bins. I'm not talking about homeless people trying to find food. I'm talking about people trying to profit. And what they'll do is, they'll go to a bin and tip it upside down. The litter and rubbish goes everywhere. The rodents are encouraged and perpetuated. They might find something that's worth £1 or £2 and go on and sell it. And they leave that mess for the poor people who live there to suffer in. And it's not acceptable. So if the public want us to outlaw bin searching, then we absolutely should. But as I say, I'm not trying to force this on anyone. I'm listening to the public. We want their feedback, and we'll do what they want.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, Chair. There wasn't an answer to the question.
No, you can only have one. You only have one supplementary, and you've had it. Sorry.
Sorry, Chair. I think you thought I had an answer. Do you want me to? Yeah. I'll do that. Sure.
Okay.
And there might be a part of it I didn't. I think you said to me, will I talk with all the ward members about TS1? Absolutely. Absolutely. We should work together. We should try hard to make everyone's lives better, support the businesses, and help create jobs. So 100%.
Right. Next question is from Councillor Furness.
I'd just like to ask the Mayor, could you give us an update on M Homes and its progress, please? Sorry, could you give us an update on M Homes and its progress, please?
So Councillor Furness is asking about M Homes. M Homes is a limited company, like a private company that the council set up for good reason, actually. The council would like to get involved in the housing market, but there are severe restrictions for councils to do that. So the way that some councils do it, they set up a limited company which they own and control, and that company can then go and do things that the council itself couldn't. I'd heard about it before the election. When I got in early May, I looked at it and I looked again. It took a while to get my head around it. But what I've found is that it was focused on 3 schemes to build a small number of homes, something like 37, perhaps an average of 37 homes in Gresham, in Hemlington, and in Beechwood. Now, the Gresham one was the one that drew my attention because I'm passionate about regenerating that area, or Newport as we call it now. I'm passionate about fighting for the underdogs who live there, whose lives are blighted, and about bringing more people into the centre of town. But the scheme that was proposed was sadly silly. It was doomed to failure. It was financially incorrect in its proposal, and it was very flawed. And as an illustration, before I was elected, I actually called the boss of a big local housing association. I was on holiday, but I tracked him down. He didn't know me from Adam, and we spoke. And I said, if I get elected, what will I do about the area that we call Gresham? He said, the first thing you have to do is do something significant. Don't do anything small because it's doomed to failure. And that's exactly what was being planned with, not with our money, but with the public's money. Now, we have to be so careful with the public money. We can be very reckless with other people's money, and we've got to make sure we stop that. So, we may well continue with M Homes. It may evolve. We may well build homes in Beechwood, and we may well build homes in Hemlington. But as for Gresham right now, M Homes is not doing anything. But the company still exists. I'm really open-minded how we can use it, and I've got people looking at that. Thank you.
I'd just like to add, obviously, it's good that you agree that we do need social housing, and there is a gap in the market because the private builders will not fill that gap. So I'm glad you agree with that, and it is good if it does progress. But it would be the first social housing built in a generation. Since Thatcher, she destroyed the social housing schemes. So we really need to fill that market gap, and there is a need for it. So I would obviously hope that you do continue with M Homes, and if you say it's not viable, then make it viable, Chair. Andy.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so this is my view on it. Yeah, the housing market locally in many areas is broken, and it needs intervention. Social housing can mean literally a dozen different things, and can all mean different things. I'm not sure whether we should build council houses. I'm not saying we definitely shouldn't. I'm not sure that we should. It isn't clear to me that's the best way forward. Again, where there's expertise and compassion and skills, and more importantly, money, we should work with that. So there are some fantastic housing associations that are beautifully skilled and equipped to do this. So my first port of call is to try and work with them to create the kinds of homes that people want to live in, that will bring people into town, that will boost our retail, boost our businesses, and create a really vibrant centre of Middlesbrough. Thanks.
I've got my second question as well.
Yeah.
Just following.
Councillor Furness, another question.
Yeah, sorry. Following the success of selective landlord licensing in Ormsby, will you be rolling it out into Newport as it was planned?
I think I've got some good news. It's already started. I think it started about, where's Adam? So, I can't hear what he said. It was the 13th, in case you couldn't hear Adam. So it's already started, which is good. It's underway. We're going to see how it goes. We get two sides of the story, actually. We're introduced selective licensing, so we're for it. But we do hear two sides to the story, so we'll continue to monitor it. If it works as we all want it to work, we'll look to roll it out in other places. That would be an obvious move, wouldn't it, if it works. But we're going to have to give it some time, listen to residents, listen to landlords, listen to businesses, and make a really intelligent decision.
I have a supplementary, Chair. It's good that you're going to roll it out, and obviously it has been a success around the country. Other places are rolling it out. So I would be happy to see it rolled out across the whole of the town where there is need for bad landlords to be put to rights.
Okay. All right, thank you, everybody. Right, we now move on to agenda item 9, which is notice of motion. We have 2 tonight. We'll take them in the order that they come out on the paper. So the first one is the one for proposer of Councillor Matthew Story. The motion is Lift the Ban Campaign Right to Work. Would you like to read out your motion, sir?
Thanks, Chair. The Lift the Ban motion states, Middlesbrough Council notes that since 2002, people seeking asylum have only been able to apply for the right to work after they have been waiting for a decision on their asylum claim for over a year. and only if they can be employed into one of the narrow, highly skilled professions included on the government's shortage occupation list. Asylum decisions are getting slower, with over half, 53%, of asylum decisions taking more than 6 months in 2017. This situation is getting worse. It was 41% at the end of 2016 and 20% at the end of 2015. People seeking asylum are left to live on a government stipend of £5.39 per day, struggling to support themselves and their families, and left vulnerable to destitution, isolation and exploitation. The UK spends between £70 and £100 million per year housing and supporting asylum seekers who could be working, earning and fending for themselves. Middlesbrough Council further notes the work of the Lift the Ban Coalition, which includes more than 150 organisations from across the UK who have come together to call on the government to give people seeking asylum the right to work. Middlesbrough Council believes that people seeking asylum who are unable to work are unable to properly integrate with their local area, can't get to know their neighbours, and find it more difficult to learn English. Restrictions on the right to work can lead to extremely poor mental health outcomes and a waste of potentially invaluable talents and skills for both the economy of Middlesbrough and the UK. We are right to campaign for people seeking asylum to be given the right to work unconstrained by the shortage occupation list after they have waited 6 months for a decision on their initial asylum claim. Middlesbrough Council resolves to join the Lift the Ban Coalition and call on the UK Government to support the campaign to give people seeking asylum the ability to seek work under the conditions outlined above.
Thank you, Councillor Story. Do you have a seconder for this? Mr. Cook, right. Do you wish to speak on it again, Councillor Story?
If I may, Chair.
Yeah.
Yes.
No speeches.
I'll be as brief as I can, Chair. It was World Refugee Week the other week, and one of the things I did was put something on Facebook to highlight the importance of refugees and the contribution that asylum seekers, refugees and immigration provides to Middlesbrough and the local area. And the quote that I quoted was something from JFK, and he said, "The interaction of disparate cultures, the vehemence of the ideals that led immigrants here, the opportunity offered by a new life, gave all Americans a flavour and character that make them unmistakable and remarkable." And I think that immigration and asylum seekers in Middlesbrough make this place remarkable and unmistakable. I was at an event, Lift the Ban Coalition event in Middlesbrough a few weeks ago, and the Mayor was there as well. And it was really interesting to hear all the different contributions. And the asylum seekers who were there, one of the gentlemen spoke about being a social worker. He'd been a social worker for 30 years, but he didn't have qualifications to be a social worker here. And all he wanted to do was to contribute and work in this country where he'd come to start a new life. There was a nuclear physicist in the room. I can't believe that we couldn't find a job for a nuclear physicist in this country for that person to do. His skills are wasted, and I felt that that was such a sad comment on the society that we live in. One of the things that I'm most proud of about living in Middlesbrough is the great diversity of cultures and religions, all the different people who come together and live side by side and live in harmony in this place. And I think it's tremendously important that we remember the contribution that all those different people make. One other fantastic thing that happens in this town, which we have many primary schools who sign up for, is a thing called Schools of Sanctuary. And it links to asylum seekers because that programme is about teaching young people in primary schools across the town about asylum, about supporting refugees, about supporting people who've come here for a better life. And Ayrsham School, Abingdon School, all these schools have signed up for that and got that status. And that's not an easy thing to do. And when you listen to the stories from the children who've come here with their families, trying to start a new life for themselves, it's heartbreaking. There was a little boy from Syria who'd watched his family be murdered by the government. And he came and he wrote a poem, and it was heartbreaking. He told this poem to the room, and he said that he felt like a sailboat without a sail. He said he felt like a rainbow without any colour. And those words stuck with me because that child was 5 years old when he came here. He didn't speak the language. He didn't know anybody. Imagine going to a place where you have no idea about the culture you know, have no idea about what you're doing other than the fact that you are fleeing torture, persecution, oppression, whether it's political or otherwise. And imagine being a 5-year-old having that on your mind all the time. Imagine starting that new life. These people come here with nothing but the shirts on their backs in a lot of cases. And we should be doing all we can to make sure they integrate with society. They can contribute to our society. They can pay national insurance. They can pay their taxes. And if at the end of the day, one of the gentlemen was saying to me, if I get deported, I get deported. But whilst I'm here, why can't I contribute? Why won't you let me work? And I think that is something that should resonate with all of us. The final thing that I think is really important to stress is that if we want to defeat the far right, if we want to stand up for equality and fairness in this society, the best way to do that, the best way to undermine anti-immigrant sentiments, anti-immigrant feeling, which is very prevalent out there today, and it's getting worse. The best way to undermine that, to take that rug out from under those people who seek to divide us, is to say that we welcome these people, we want them to work, we want them to be part of our society, and we say, come here, start your new life, and be part of our society and part of our culture. We can beat the far right by showing them that we are better than that. We can be better as a society, and that's what this motion speaks to, and that's why I recommend everyone in this chamber tonight votes in favour of this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Story. Has anybody got anything to say?
Thank you, Chair. Barry Cooper, Ward Councillor for Newport and Gresham, also Exec for Children's Services. I would like to assure Councillor Story I'm not fundamentally opposed to Motion 137, but I would like some further information. Councillor Story has obviously researched this, so I would ask, would a right to work give a national insurance number and a tax code, and by doing so alter the asylum seeker's status, with the result that the government's asylum seekers panel have further difficulty in determining the right of the asylum seeker to remain within the UK? I do see the good intentions, but could we hinder rather than help?
All right, you respond.
Thanks for that, Councillor Cooper, and I appreciate the fact that you say you're not opposed to the motion, because I think it's very important that this motion passes. I think it's a critical motion, especially in light of this being the town that it is, and the fact that we've all come from somewhere else, which I think is very important to remember. The point you make about national insurance and tax codes is well made. The intention is for the contribution of these people to be full and complete. So yes, they would be expected to contribute to society. That's the point, really, to say that we're actually taking revenue away from the exchequer because we're not allowing these people to work. If they do that, then they can pay into the system. Now, it isn't explicit in the motion, but it's something that the Lift the Ban Coalition discussed, and it's something I discussed with people at the meeting a couple of weeks ago, which is that my personal belief, and some of the belief of people in the room, is that if people do work here and they start a business or they work in a particular industry or whatever else, that contribution to society should be included in their application to the Home Office, because if they are making that contribution, that is a positive thing, and it should count towards their asylum claim, because it clearly shows that this person is here for good reason, they're here to work, they want to contribute, and that should count towards their application. And I think that makes total sense. As I say, it's not explicit in the motion, but it's about getting the right for these people to work. It's about the rights of, not necessarily the explicit detail, but the rights of the people to work. And yes, they would have a national insurance and tax code, and they would pay into the system.
Anybody else want a comment or want to say anything about it? Nobody? Right, we'll go to the vote. All those people who are in favour of accepting this motion, please show. Chair. 42 for. All those people who are against this motion, please show. Just one, Chair. Just one. Motion carried. Second motion tonight is from Councillor Rooney, and it's labelled Social Rights Motion. Councillor Rooney, would you like to read your motion, please?
Thank you, Chair. As a party to the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, the UK must take steps to the maximum of its available resources to achieve progressively the realisation of social rights. However, 14 million people, which is a fifth of the population, live in poverty. 4 million of them are more than 50% below the poverty line, and 1.5 million are destitute, unable to afford basic essentials. The UN Special Rapporteur on Extreme Poverty and Human Rights, Philip Alston, visited the UK in November of last year, and that included a visit to the North East. At the end of his mission, Professor Alston concluded the costs of austerity have fallen disproportionately upon the poor, women, racial and ethnic minorities, children, single parents and people with disabilities. The changes to taxes and benefits since 2010 have been highly regressive, and the policies have taken the highest toll on those least able to bear it. The experience of the United Kingdom, especially since 2010, underscores the conclusion that poverty is a political choice. It is the opinion of this Council that the successive governments could have done more to bring the socio-economic duty to life. And Middlesbrough Council recognises that everyone is entitled to the right to education, adequate housing, health care, food, social security and a decent standard of living, and that everyone has the right to hold the government and other public authorities to account for the decisions that affect them. Middlesbrough Council resolves to express support for local campaigns and activities that defend and promote social rights, and that the Chair of the Council writes to the Secretary of State and Prime Minister to convey the feelings of the full Council, which met tonight on 26th of June 2019.
Thank you, Councillor Rooney. You have a seconder? Councillor Halawi? You wish to speak? Do you wish to speak now, or do you want to speak later on?
I'd like to speak now, Chair, please.
Go on then.
I wholeheartedly support this motion that we should write to the Secretary of State and the Prime Minister to convey the feelings of this council. Of course, many councils across the country have had cuts, but some of the towns in particular have had very severe cuts. I studied the local authorities listings. There were 336 local authorities that I found listed, and Middlesbrough was in the top 15th position for having the hardest funding cuts per head of the population. And we were 7th out of this 300 plus local authorities, with 33% of our children living in poverty, compared, for example, with Wokingham, where 7% of the children live in poverty. The nature of these cuts from central government has exacerbated the unfairness in the distribution of our taxpayers' money, because some councils are being hit much more severely than others. The revenue support grant will be cut by government by another 36% further next year. So this will obviously impact on our townsfolk much more severely than in other places. This austerity has actively reshaped the relationship between central and local government. And some local authorities have greater economic resilience to withstand the cuts. But here in Middlesbrough, the situation is becoming more and more worrying as central government cuts hit harder on us than many other areas. And I'd like to just conclude with an anecdote to back the motion in terms of how women are more badly affected, people are more badly affected with a disability. And just to exemplify that, in the ward last year, I was in a meeting when I got a very urgent phone call from a health visitor in the house of one of our residents who said, Alma, get your health across here quickly. I've got a resident here in utter distress. She's got 3 beautiful children. They also have disability, and she's going to get evicted tonight. What can you do? So I left the meeting, hot-footed it across, rang the local authority, got it altered. She didn't have to be evicted that night. I got her council tax readjusted, and then I went to investigate what was happening with universal credit on her account. She'd had her universal credit cut to the lowest level for herself with disability and 3 children. And since she couldn't read and understand the information she was given, she was falling severely by the wayside to the point of eviction, destitution. I went with her to another investigation about her circumstances. In fact, we had to go to Redcar because she couldn't be seen in Middlesbrough. Another complication of universal credit for a family with no transport. And by the time that hearing had finished, she was put on the very highest level of support when her case was fully understood and for life. She'll never be investigated again. She's getting her entitlement. And I just want to mention that as an example of one family who could have faced destitution through the unfairness of universal credit and its implications. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, has anybody else got any comments?
Can I just go?
You go first, Councillor, yes.
Right.
It's your motion, yes.
Thanks, Chair. Just to give a little bit of background to what the motion is about. The Equality Act was a major step forward. It protects against direct and indirect discrimination in public services and harassment in the private sphere, which includes the workplace. And although social class is not a protected characteristic under the Equality Act, Section 1 contains what is known as the socio-economic duty. This duty, although not binding, would require public authorities to have due regard when exercising its functions in a way that is designed to reduce the inequalities of outcome which result from socio-economic disadvantage. So in that sense, although the impact that we're seeing is as a direct result of national policies, there are things as a local authority that we can do to help mitigate some of these effects. So when the research was carried out, the authority by, I've forgotten his name now, where is he? Philip Alston. The authorities and organisations taking part in the research used different frames and agendas to articulate their policy. So they looked at their policies and they looked at how they operated and what the impact was and how that affected people who were disadvantaged, and how it looked at fairness, impact assessment, equality, budgeting and social inclusion. And all of the authorities and organisations taking part in that research were very clear that austerity had prompted them to react, both because of the way universal credit and other welfare reforms were affecting their residents and because of the limitations on local government funding. As an authority, we've implemented the living wage for our employees. We also use our scrutiny process to examine the impact of national and local policy on our vulnerable and marginalised people, and wherever possible, we mitigate those impacts. We've seen the rollout of universal credit in Middlesbrough. It began before Christmas, and it's clear to speaking to people in our surgeries and in our campaign work that universal credit is having a detrimental effect on some of our most vulnerable groups. As an example, according to Women's Budget Group, lone mothers with disabilities have lost the most overall due to the cumulative impact of tax and welfare reforms. By 2021, lone mothers with disabilities are set to lose 21% of their income. This rises to 32% if one of the children also has a disability. The UK has the responsibility to ensure that all of its decisions and policies are not discriminatory towards any group, and this needs to be reflected in its budgetary decisions. I suggest that the following statement is reflected in the letter to central government, that the DWP should review the Welfare Reform Act 2012 and the Welfare Reform Act 2016 to restore the link between social security entitlements and the cost of living. That the DWP should design and implement a comprehensive child poverty strategy and reinstate the targets and reporting duties on child poverty. That Her Majesty's Treasury should extend the analysis of the distributional impact of tax and public spending to look at the aggregate impact in light of the protected characteristics under the Equality Act 2010, as well as income and wealth disparities. Locally, in order to take this forward, it's vital that someone senior within the local authority champions this work. And this is an opportunity as a council for us to facilitate local cross-party support. In order to ensure we respond correctly and be transparent and accountable, data has to be available. As an authority, we have significant amounts of data available to us, both in the authority and through our partner organisations. And finally, residents and organised civil society can be both critical challengers and creators of innovative ideas. In Middlesbrough, we have a financial inclusion group which, if we take this forward, could be tasked with examining the data and bringing forward recommendations to be incorporated into council policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wants to comment on this? Anybody got anything else to say? Can we let Councillor Story go again on this? He hasn't spoken on this. Councillor Branson at the back, please.
I just wanted to point out just how difficult the situation is at the moment. I've got some, if we actually look at where we've been since 2014, the last 5 years, we've seen in the northeast region 200,000 more children go into poverty. And one of the main reasons for this is because people are not earning the money and the wages and the jobs that they have. It's all well and good to say lots of people have employment. It's no good if that employment does not pay enough for you to live on. And the fact is that jobs that are paying less than the living wage have increased by 11% over the last 5 years in this region. People are basically working but not being paid enough money as a result of their week's work. And unless we tackle that, we're not really going to tackle the problems of poverty in this area. And it does disturb me that we have at the moment a contest for the Conservative Party leadership where the main aim of the people involved seems to be proposing huge tax cuts, which according to the Institute of Financial Services are overwhelmingly going to benefit the top 10% of earners. What on earth are we doing giving money to people who are already well off when we have such obvious examples of poverty in our society at the moment? We're not going to be able to deal with these problems until we have a government that is committed to ensuring that we have fairer situation as regards the social welfare, instead of just simply looking after those people who are well off as it is. Thank you.
Councillor Story, you indicated you wish to speak. You've got 5 minutes maximum.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I should get it done in 5 minutes. One of the things that I've been dealing with in my work life, I work for the Member of Parliament, and we've been helping a constituent who has a particular case which I think is relevant to this motion. She is entitled to a benefit called severe disability payment. And people who are on severe disability payment were informed that they should apply for universal credit. That advice was provided by the government, it was provided by the DWP, and that advice was wrong. Because once they applied for universal credit, their SDP payments were stopped. Which meant that this young woman, who was a single parent, has lost £260 a month. Now, that is a hell of a lot of money. I would really struggle with that. I think most people in this room would struggle if someone took £260 a month off them. The worst thing about it is that originally nothing was going to be done. People who were claiming that benefit had to go to the High Court to get the government to listen. And the High Court judgment stated that that money should be reinstated and it should be backdated. So that's good then. The problem being, it has to be done when the government decides, and they have to take it through the House of Commons, and they haven't yet done that. The DWP can't tell us when that money will be backdated. They can't tell us when the money will be reinstated. They have said that they'll provide a short-term payment, but they can't say how much that will be, and they can't say when it'll start. And that means that up until the end of this year, this young woman, a single parent, is going to struggle to get by because the government is grossly incompetent, gave out the wrong advice, and because they have not amended their mistake appropriately. And we're trying to assist her. And this council, credit to this council, we have the most fantastic team in revenues and benefits. They have supported her. They've given her help with her utilities bills. They've given her help with food to feed her kids. And they will do that until such a time as that money kicks in. But that is this local authority stepping in where this government has failed. You may have seen today, you may not, but the Child Poverty Action Group released a report today that said that the restriction on child benefit of only paying it out to the first 2 children means that families are missing out on £53 a week in benefits. It cuts £1 billion from the social security budget, which I'm sure a lot of people in this room would say, good, we should cut that budget. But it puts 300,000 more children into poverty. This is not about skivers and strivers either. This is not about Osborne's invented made-up, dreadful analogy of the people behind their curtains who sit there whilst we all go to work. 59% of the people who are affected by that benefit cut are in work. And so many of these people are in work. 80% of people who claim housing benefit are in work. The International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, which Denise referenced, says that A right to food, housing as part of an adequate standard of living, labour rights, a right to health, education, participation in cultural life. These are rights and have equal status in international law with civil and political rights, such as freedom of expression and right to a fair trial. That woman and her SDP payment, she has the same right to that SDP payment as I have to stand here and make this speech. But she's not getting her payment, and I can talk into this microphone, and that is why it is wrong. The next thing I wanted to say, which is also very important...
Councillor, you're running out of time.
I'm going to wrap up right now. Economic and social rights are human rights like any other. And the only way we get a fairer and more equal society is by enshrining those things in motions like this today. The previous Labour administration lobbied, and this council, we lobbied for more funding, we lobbied for better pay, we lobbied for better funding for local authorities, we lobbied to scrap the bedroom tax. We lobbied that government for more money. We said to the Tories, this has to stop and we want austerity to stop. And I would hope that the new administration will also take that case to Westminster and say that the woman we've been helping, say the people we have been helping, deserve their entitlements, because nobody should show any level of gratitude for their entitlements. An older person who claims attendance allowance should not show gratitude. They are entitled to that. Someone seeking work should not show gratitude for claiming job seekers allowance. They are entitled to that. And we have to start talking about social security as an entitlement again. And that's what this motion does, and that's why we should all support it.
Sorry, I want to interrupt you. That's your 5 minutes. Right, I think, to be quite honest, I think we've exhausted this topic long enough. I think it's time that we put it to the vote. It's gone on and gone on and gone on. So everyone who is in favour of this motion being accepted, will you please show? Chair. 43. Anyone against? Please show. 3. Right, motion carried. We'll continue with the council meeting. Now we've got item agenda 10, which is notice of urgent motions. There are none. Council item agenda 11, which is council committees, outside bodies, allocation of places and memberships 2019-2020. So
just 2 minutes. I just wanted to state something. The Labour group have been in communication with the legal officers of the council on the basis of the allocation of places. It's our view, and it's the view of the statutory guidance on scrutiny, that executive members should not vote on scrutiny matters. It is the statutory guidance states that the executive should not directly or indirectly influence the scrutiny process, because executive members are being scrutinised by those people, and they should not select the people who scrutinise them and their portfolios. That is what the statutory guidance states. And it is our belief that the executive, if they vote on these scrutiny positions tonight, which I believe the legal advice is that they can, if they do vote on this, they will be directly or indirectly influencing the scrutiny process. In the past, Labour executive members did not vote on scrutiny positions, and neither did the Labour mayor, because they did not believe they should be involved in selecting the people who scrutinise them, and I think that they should do the same thing tonight.
Thank you, Chair. If I could very briefly respond to Councillor Story's point of order. As he's already correctly pointed out, the legal advice is that executive members can vote on appointments to scrutiny committees. As has been discussed at the previous meeting, it has been previously custom and practice that executive members do not do so. However, there is nothing to stop executive members from doing so.
Right. Okay, we'll carry on with point 11, which is the council committees, outside bodies, allocation of places and memberships. And over to the Deputy Monitoring Officer.
Thank you, Chair. This report has been brought owing to the recent changes in group composition. That has necessitated a redraft of the political balance, which is for Council to note. I also have, with your indulgence, Chair, the unenviable task of going through every single council committee to go through the changes to the composition of those committees and certain outside bodies.
Carry on.
So if I can start with the outside bodies chair, there is one vacancy on the Resources and Finish Task Group ANEC. That vacancy is open to anyone if there are any nominations.
Councillor Mawson.
Are there any further nominations? If Councillor Mawson could be appointed chair.
Councillor Mawson.
The Tees Valley Combined Authority Overview and Scrutiny Committee. This is a vacancy which is reserved to Mika. There is one nomination for Councillor McTagg. And if
That's fine.
whether a nomination, Chair, if they could be just noted.
Yeah.
There's a place on the Tees Valley Audit and Governance Committee. This place is reserved for Labour, and the nomination is for Councillor Matthew Storey. Middlesbrough Environment City Trust. This is a change of membership owing to the new executive portfolios. Originally, the Deputy Mayor had been appointed to this outside body, and now the executive member for the environment will be appointed to that outside body. There is also now a vacancy on the Durham, Darlington, Teesside, Hambledon, Richmondshire and Whitby SPT Joint Committee. Councillor Cooper was previously appointed to this committee, but because he's now an executive member, there is one vacancy open to all. I have one nomination for Councillor Halawi. Are there any further nominations? That can be agreed then, Chair?
Yep.
Now on to the council committees. The first council committee is the Corporate Affairs and Audit Committee. There is one independent place of a nomination from Councillor Garvey. Councillor Garvey is the only person that can take up that place.
Right.
Under the Licensing Committee, there is one independent place. I have one nomination for Councillor Waters. Are there any further independent nominations?
No.
If that can be agreed then, Chair?
No.
Oh, apologies. There is also a place reserved for Mika, and Councillor Jones has been appointed to that committee. On to the Overview and Scrutiny Board, there are 6 Labour vacancies. Councillors Cook, Halawi, Higgins, Matthew Storey, Thompson and Udden have been appointed, and there is one Mika place, and Councillor Rathmell has been appointed. For the Ad Hoc Scrutiny Panel, there is one independent place. Councillor Garvey has been nominated, and he is the only independent who is entitled to take up that place. On the Adult Social Care and Services Scrutiny Panel, there is one independent place. Again, Councillor Garvey has been nominated, and he's the only person who can take that up. The Mika Group have lost one place on that committee, and that Councillor Sands has been removed from that committee. Right. On the Children and Young People's Learning Scrutiny Panel, there is one independent place. Again, Councillor Garvey. Again, he's the only person who can take that up. The Mika Group have lost one place. Councillor Jones has been removed from that committee. There is one Conservative place, and Councillor Smith has been nominated for that committee. On the Children and Young People's Social Care and Services Scrutiny Panel, there's one independent place. Councillor Garvey once again. Mika, the group, have lost one place. Councillor Rathmell has come off that committee. On the Culture and Communities Scrutiny Panel, there's one independent place, one nomination, Councillor Garvey. On the Economic Development, Environment and Infrastructure Panel, there's one independent place, Councillor Garvey. There's one Mika Group place to lose, and we need a name from the independent. Thank you, Councillor. On the Health Scrutiny Panel, Mika Group lose one place, that will be Councillor Dodds. There is one independent place. The only person who is eligible is Councillor Garvey if he wishes. Then that place is opened up to everyone. We have one nomination from Councillor Higgins. Do you have any further nominations? Councillor Rathmell, any further nominations? If we could take a vote then, Chair.
Take a vote, yeah. All those in favour of Councillor Higgins, please show.
That is 20, Chair.
20. All those in favour of Councillor Rathmell, please show.
14, 16, 7.
Oh, me.
Yes. It's 26, Chair.
26. So Councillor Rathmell gets the position.
On the Planning and Development Committee, Councillor Davison has requested to come off. That means there's one independent place. Councillor Garvey has been nominated. Are there any further independent nominations? Councillor Waters, you're not eligible because you're on licensing. Okay, if that can be agreed. On the Staff Appeals Committee, Councillor Davison has withdrawn from that committee. The Meeker Group have lost one place, which is Councillor Cooper. There is one. There's one Conservative place, and Councillor Smiles has been nominated for that. And there is one independent place, and I don't have any nominations. So if there are any nominations. Councillor Waters? Yeah. And if that could be agreed. On the Standards Committee, there is one independent place, and that's been nominated that Councillor Waters take that place. On the Teesside Pension Fund Committee, Meeker Group lose one place, which is Councillor Rathmell. There is one independent place, if there are any nominations. As there are no independent nominations, I'll open that up to the entire council. Any further nominations? So we have Councillor McTighe and Councillor Denise Rooney, Chair, if we could have a vote.
Right, all those in favour of Councillor McTighe, please show.
That's 24, Chair.
All those in favour of Councillor Dean, please show.
Rooney.
Sorry, oh?
Rooney.
Rooney, sorry. You look alike.
That's 20, Chair.
That's 20. So,
Councillor McTighe was appointed.
Councillor McTighe gets elected.
The Teesside Pension Board, the Deputy Mayor will be replaced by the Executive Member for Finance and Governance. The Chief Officer Appointments Committee, there is one place which Councillor Saunders has been nominated for. There is one independent place which the Mayor has been nominated for, and Councillor High will be removed from that count. The Corporate Health and Safety Committee, the Meeker Group will lose one place. That will be Councillor Cooper. There is one Labour place, which Councillor Rooney will take up. The Works Council, there is one Meeker place. There's one nomination for Councillor Cooper. On the Constitution and Members Development Committee, there is one independent place. Councillor Garvey has been nominated for that. And last but not least, on the Corporate Parenting Board, the Meeker Group are to lose one place, and Councillor McTighe will come off that. There's one independent place, and that Councillor Garvey has been nominated for that. And you'll be very happy to know, Chair, that that is the end.
Thank goodness for that.
So, if those appointments could be noted, Chair.
Yes. Thank you very much. That was very good. Right, it only leaves me now formally to close this ordinary meeting. But as we've had the papers for an extraordinary meeting, we've got to go through the three options of opening it and closing it. So, apologies for absence. Can we maintain that the apologies for absence for the first meeting will continue for this one? Yes? Thank you. Declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? No? That's fine. Right, so I've got to read out that we're opening the meeting and announce that a request has been received from the lead signatory to the request for the extraordinary council meeting. That request was submitted prior to the election and a change in political landscape, so that extraordinary council request has now been withdrawn. So that's it. We can all go home. Finished. Hope everyone has a safe journey home, and we'll see you all at the next meeting. Thank you and good night.